that's the last one, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6 is 5 and 4, so that goes there. So I think, yeah. Left there, but then 5 and... No. That's last. That's 4, that's 5. Okay, as long as that stays the same, it's the last. Yeah. That's right. Because that goes 4 and that goes 6.
Right, well, it's 7 p.m, so welcome to tonight's planning committee. It is nice to be back doing this in person. Can I welcome firstly those new members to this committee who've come on since we last met. And personally, I think this is the best committee in the council to be on. I hope everyone has a very pleasant experience being a member of it. Normally, for the last year and a bit, I've been saying, so I'll hand over to Mr. Ward to take us through the first bit, but given that we're here in person, I can do it myself. So, firstly, any apologies for
Yes,
Councillor Ball? Yeah.
I've got apologies from Richard Jackson and Margaret Hanley, and Paul Simpson is taking Richard's place, and Jill is taking Margaret's place.
Thank you very much. I think on this side we're all present. Declarations of interest. I'm declaring interest in application 5.3 because I'm friends with the objector, so I will withdraw from the chair for that one and hand over to Councillor McGrath to take us through that one. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay. Minutes of the meeting on the 21st of April. There is a correction to make which Councillor Hanley emailed me about earlier, so I'm just trying what she told me to make sure I've got this right. The Untitled application, which was so, item 71.5 on page 14, just correct where it says that Simon Dexter applicant and councillor Richard Robinson ward member make representations. In fact, Richard, it's not your ward, is it? So, that's right. You spoke as the person who called it into the committee, so we just need to delete the word ward member from there. Otherwise, I'll move these as a true and correct record.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is notification of lobbying. Just to explain to those who are watching, we welcome lobbying as being part of the planning process. It happens all the time, but to make sure that everything's done openly and above board, we do ask members to fill in the form to declare they're doing lobbying, and I would ask people just to mention that at the start of anything that they say, so that it's all absolutely out in the open. I've been lobbying on most of the items on the agenda tonight, I think all but the first and the last one, and I suspect others are probably in a similar position, but if people could just mention that when they first speak on an item. And that takes us to item 5, which is the individual applications. So I'll just explain how these are going to work. For each application, I will ask Mr. Dawson, who sits to my left, who's the head of planning, to introduce the application, to explain a bit about the issues, and obviously all the councillors have a copy of the report that has been written by the planning officers and will have read that report. After Mr. Dawson has spoken, I will then move the item. That simply opens up the process for debate. and Councillor McGrath will second that. That is a purely procedural step. It doesn't necessarily mean for any item that I'm particularly in favour of it, or indeed that I'm particularly against it. For most of the applications tonight, we have members of the public to speak, so I will then call on them to speak, and we will go applicant first and then objector where we have them. We will then turn to any ward councillors or councillors who brought applications in who aren't members of the committee to speak. I will then call on any ward councillor for that ward who is a member of this committee to speak, and will then open it up to more general discussion and debate. At the end of the debate, we will then take a vote either for or against each application. Alternatively, we can vote to defer it to go onto a later agenda if there's more information that's needed. And a number of the items on the agenda tonight have been deferred from previous meetings. So hopefully we've now got all the information we need and we won't need to defer again. So that is the process that we'll go through for each application. Members are able to speak as often as they want, and I'll call people in the order that they catch my eye by waving frantically at me. So that's the process. The first one then is item 5.1, which is application 200056. This is outline application to demolish White House Farm and to construct up to 250 dwellings, including the provision of new areas of open space, children's play, landscaping and stormwater attenuation, with all matters reserved except for the formation of a vehicular access from the A6096, and that's the Order bypass, and the secondary access from Newton's Lane. Reserving matters simply means that those applications, those details will come in later. So all we're being asked to approve tonight is the outline of development there, but with those two bits of detail in terms of the access. So Mr Dawson, can I go to you to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. I'll do the late items first, which should have two emails, but from one resident. If you do have a copy of them before you, it feels the decision's already been made, and circumstances weighed in favour of approval. Previous comments have been disregarded, situations have been handled disgracefully. Committee of non-residents will make decisions but have different view of how to live next door. Ongoing issue for years, so why now being rushed through plenty more people having their say? Should wait for COVID to be lifted. Queries where residents living close to the site with respect to the speaker committee, so the best candidate to speak. Whoever speaks will have less than 24 hours to prepare. Queries what evidence there is that wildlife removed from the site, confirmation committee aren't putting your homes ahead of wildlife. Queries whether due diligence has been completed, insufficient room at the school for additional children, no room to expand. Implications of pollution in the area with over 200 houses and associated cars. There's already new buildings in Aldsworth are any more needed, and doubts there is evidence to support new builds and queries why development will continue anyway. Reason such things happen is usually due to incompetence or indifference. That's the only item on that one. It's quite a big scheme, so there's quite a lot of detail, so please bear with me. Allocated site approved in the 2019 Broxtowe Local Plan. The illustrative master plan shows a central road through the site. Access taken from the A6096 and Newton's Lane. Those on the site earlier, remember the secondary access and the primary access. The smaller secondary access roads and private drives lead to dwellings off a prime route through the site. Various pedestrian cycle links are shown through the site, as are landscaped areas, public open space, surface water, attenuation and a central children's play area. As it's outlined, as the Chair has explained, the plans are only indicative at this stage. 10 hectare site with a farm in the middle proposed to be demolished. Historically, the clay pit and a cast mine are now low-grade agricultural land. The Grade 2 star energy viaduct is located 175 metres to the west, and coastal conservation area is located 1 kilometre to the south-east of the site. Site this size, some comments have been received, positive, negative, and summarised in the report. The application was also accompanied by several supporting documents. Again, these are summarised in the report sufficiently. Main issues: principal overall, viability and access. Principal, it's been allocated in the local plan for up to 250, and there are no other policy issues in our view, and that should not prevent development in accordance with the Aldsworth Neighbourhood Plan. Viability, these are going to detail these in a lot in the report. However, contributions sought total 2.8 million, and policy 15 of the party local plan requires 30% affordable housing to equate to 75 units. The applicants have submitted a report identifying these amounts, both the financial and the affordable housing division, are not viable, and the report outlines why. As usual, we've asked for a independent report to be assessed by a consultant, and there was dialogue between the council and relevant parties, and clarification sought on a number of points. The main issues discussed included the costs associated with developments such as the Central Spine Road, construction costs, significant land remediation due to coal mining legacy issues, drainage, landscaping. Initially, the independent viability expert confirmed the site was not viable with requested contributions, but queried some of the cost assumptions, and consequently further assessments of the costs were carried out, details clarified, particularly reference to initial benchmarking costs and mitigating coal mining issues, and the cost surveyor was contacted to verify some of the details. Apologies, but this is quite detailed this bit. Construction and sale costs, considering outline scheme based on 250 units, 75 of these being affordable units, with the market housing split being 9 1-bed, 52 2-bed, 79 3-bed, and 35 4-bed. The final viability report from the appointed assessor, which incorporated work from QS, stated the main difference in developers' viability independent assessment was based on the benchmark land value. Ultimately, whilst developers did not agree with all elements of independent assessments, they proposed a position of 20% affordable housing and financial contributions of 1.5 million. The assessors confirmed this offer is almost identical in line with the findings of appraisal and recommend this offer is accepted by the council. With all that in mind, the report suggests to accept 1.5 million with a high-risk contribution of 258,000 towards the roundabouts nearby to make development acceptable on high-risk grounds. Because if we don't do that, it would likely result in severe implications to the local highway network. And then 20% affordable housing on site, and the remaining money to be split between county highways, education, and the CCG. Got into a report in some detail, but that's up to members to decide the exact amounts to be split if approval is granted. On to other points, access. The two main points are considered to be acceptable with regard to their design and subject to contributions towards off-site mitigation works. You can see the plans on page 103, and hopefully they're clear on the bigger screen. I hope they are. And paragraph 6.4.8 in the report. Following amendments, no objections have been raised to these points and the proposed layout. Transport assessment has been submitted as part of the application that covers the various existing and proposed transport measures that are proposed, including existing and future links to the site. Importantly, with regards to vehicle traffic, the report includes that 2 junctions still operate within existing capacity. That's proposed site access and Coronation Road, Church Lane, Alsford Road junctions. 2 junctions have existing capacity issues the proposal will not have a severe impact on. They're Charlotte Way, Newton's Lane, Charlotte Way, Coronation Road, and Bishop Way. With mitigation, the remaining 2 junctions would result in improvement in performance on existing levels. The Highways Authority raised no objections to the overall traffic movement from the site and agreed with data sets, done on mapping tools, and account of traffic flows. The County Council commissioned a comprehensive improvement scheme on the roundabouts in the area due to existing capacity issues. They've therefore requested that rather than developing prior to undertake the mitigation works identified, they've asked a contribution towards these works, which is the 258,000 I referred to earlier. The requirement for this contribution should be secured as part of Section 6 from this in place. We considered the impact of development construction not severe to warrant refusal of permission. On to other issues. Flooding. Any development would have to mimic greenfield runoff rates, and SUDS, sustainable urban drainage systems, are proposed as a possible solution to achieve this, and there's no LFA objection. It satisfies the issues could be resolved and dealt with at the reserve matter stage. Ecology, the proposed development is considered to cause no significant harm to wildlife, subject to mitigation works, which will be secured through conditions. Due to the age reports, the fact that further permissions will need to be sought, which will delay the commencement of development. It's also considered appropriate condition and more up-to-date reports are submitted with any reserve matters application. There are no designated assets in the site itself, but as I mentioned earlier, the grade 2 viaduct has historical and architectural value at the national level, being one of only 2 surviving waterline viaducts in the country. There will be some impact on this setting, as the use of the viaduct is possible from within the site. However, due to the surrounding topography, the intervening distance and the land use is not considered to be significant. Whilst there is some minimal impact on its setting, consider the formation links from the site to the viaduct and beyond are an important part of its interpretation, enjoyment and maintenance. Coal and pollution. Several reports have already submitted to address these points. Whilst concerns have been raised with regard to noise, air pollution, historical coal works and land stability, No key stakeholders have raised any objections to any of these issues, subject to further survey work, which is conditioned. Particular reference to coal workings to ensure the development of the site is safe. The site is not an air quality area action zone, and the EHO has said this development will not have a significant impact on air quality area, with particular reference to the local school. The proposals are compliant with the orders of neighbourhood plan. Particular reference will be made to policy H1 when observed mass application submitted. A referendum has now been proposed, which I think is next week, and therefore stating later items the topic should be given significant weight in determining the application moving forward. We generally consent with the scheme and therefore recommend approval. That's it. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you very much. Just before I move on to anything else, just to pick up on a couple of the points that have been made in the late items by the residents, and particularly the first one, Phil's decision has already been made. I would like to assure everybody on every application that that is not the case. This committee makes the decisions, this committee approaches all the decisions with an open mind. That having been said, there is a planning process, and the planning process does involve the creation of what's called the local plan, which Mr Dawson made reference to. The local plan identifies various sites for development, and that goes through a process of public inquiry. That has already been done for this site, and so to that extent a decision has been made that this is a suitable site for development. That does not mean that this is the suitable scheme for it. That's the question that we have to determine tonight. So a decision has only been made to that extent, and I would like to assure anybody listening that all of the councillors on this committee have training in terms of dealing with planning. We all assess all applications with an open mind. Whether we live there or not is utterly irrelevant and does not affect our approach to them. So everyone on every item could be assured about that. Okay, I'm going to move the recommendation, which is the grant planning permission.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we now turn to the public speakers. So, firstly, we have Joe Neville. Ms Neville, have you got a microphone there?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you. So, okay, have we given you a chair there?
No.
No. Would you like a chair? We don't need to make you stand.
I don't mind. No, I'll stand.
You sure?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. So you've got 3 minutes. I'll give you a prompt shortly before the end.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Neville, Planning Manager for Harwood Group, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at tonight's committee. Harwood Group are the promoters of this site on behalf of the landowners, and we are one of the UK leading land and regeneration property companies, and we predominantly operate through the north of England and the Midlands. We own and manage approximately 18,000 acres across 100 sites, and this is particularly important for this site because we're specialists in bringing forward sites for development that are affected by historic mining issues. We've worked closely with the council's officers and the parish council through the preparation and adoption of the local plan and the neighbourhood plan to promote this site for residential use. We've listened to the parish council and the community and developed a proposal that provides new homes to meet Bournemouth's housing need, provides on-site public open space and play areas, retains important landscape features, and creates a dedicated new vehicle access off Shiloh Way. This new vehicle access off Shiloh Way will alleviate concerns from residents regarding traffic in Aldworth and the use of Newton's Lane. Our transport assessment submitted with the application forecast that only 5 additional vehicles during peak hours will use the Newton's Lane access because the Shiloh Way access is far preferable. The master plan also provides new pedestrian connections to Park Hill and Barlow Drive to ensure that the development is truly connected with the existing community, and we also allow for a bus route through the site. As I've said, the application is the culmination of several years of preparation and investigation work, and we're very supportive of the officer's recommendation. The site is a challenging site to deliver, given its previous use, and we've undertaken extensive intrusive ground investigations across the site to understand what it is that we're dealing with in the ground. This has shown that there's significant abnormal costs in delivering this site to the market, and we've worked hard to put together a package of Section 106 obligations and affordable housing to meet the council's objectives. We hope that the package of 20% affordable housing, coupled with the 1.5 million pot of 106 to facilitate education and public transport requests, provides members with the comfort that the impacts of this development can be mitigated and local plan objectives achieved. The planning officer has provided a comprehensive report which addresses in detail all material planning considerations, and there are no objections from statutory consultees, and we would respectfully request that members accept the officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to take your seat again. Thank you. And then I turn to Mr. Keith Birtle. Mr. Birtle, would you like to go to the microphone then? You are again quite welcome to use the chair that's now been provided.
Yeah, no, you're all right, I'll stand, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So, exactly the same, you've got 3 minutes and I'll give you a prompt.
I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the residents who live on Newton's Lane and that area. The one thing that's concerning them most is, well, firstly, they don't know how they build in there anyway, because there's a perfectly good brownfield site that's not being used, and you've changed the greenfield site into a building site, but that's not really done. Too late to argue about that. The one thing we're not certain about is the road access onto Newton's Lane via this side. We're talking about 250 houses being built on this land. 250 houses equates to 500 cars. Most houses have 2 cars nowadays. If only 2/5 of those cars use Newton's Lane, that's 200 cars per day using Newton's Lane. That's 400 car journeys. If only 50% of them turn left at the top of Newton's Lane, that is 200 car journeys per day past the school, which is only a few hundred yards from the road. Well, it's not even 100 yards, a few yards. So you're going to be pumping all that pollution into the school playground where the children are. There's a far simpler and a far better way of sorting that exit out. If you've got to come out onto Newton's Lane, so be it. But put bollards on Newton's Lane above that access and open the access out at the bottom to another island onto Shiloh Way. It's simple, it's safe, and it's protecting the lives and health of children. That's all I'm going to say, really.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your seat. Right. Well, I will open it up for debate, and Councillor Ball, it's your ward. Would you like to go first?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first
You're
of
not
all...
on. Right-hand button.
Oh, right. I'm not really sure that I want to see myself on that screen. It puts me off. Oh my God. Sorry. I don't like it. First of all, Chair, I would like to thank you and the committee members of people that came on the site visit today. If you remember the last meeting I had, which was a bit confusing because we were on Teams, I wasn't very happy with the way this report was presented with this map of the Shiloh Way and Newton's Lane. To me, it wasn't very clear, and it still isn't. But, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted members to go down and have a look, and I think it was very wise that we did. Now, you've already said that there has to be more planning of the opening of the bypass. It's not quite, that's not quite not finished yet, is it?
It's an outline scheme.
Yeah. And also onto Newton's Lane. And if you remember at the last meeting, I did mention Newton's Lane. Newton's Lane is a very narrow, it's a country road, lovely. It's not very wide. Obviously people are parking a lot down there. I've been very concerned about the residents for that. And one of the things, if you read this carefully, that worries me, David, is the fact that the new road onto Newton could cause a rat run. And I'm looking at you tonight to say, is there some way we can rectify this, or, you know, present a better scenario? Because if the car's coming onto Newton's Lane, they will go to the top of Newton's Lane. Now, I've got to mention this because it's in our neighbourhood plan, and I didn't mention the neighbourhood plan at the last meeting, and I'm in trouble, big time. And one of the reasons is that they will turn left onto the lane in Allsworth. Now, we've got big speed and traffic problems there. And the neighbourhood plan and the people in Allsworth would want to see some sort of road management put in as well. And if you live there, you will be able to understand that. So they are my main problems. And something else that, I know I can't do anything about it, but it just niggles me a little bit. We've been working 5 years on a neighbourhood plan, and the referendum's not till next week when we have a vote. I really wish this application had come in after we'd had the referendum. You know, I just think, is somebody jumping the gun here? But I am concerned about the traffic, the road problems. But I know we've got to have the housing, and I'm not against that at all. So please, all of you, I don't want you to think that I am, because I've lived in Waters for 50 years or more, and it's a lovely place to live, and I want to see other families live there. And at the end of the day, I'm looking because I've got a roof over my head. It might be leaking, but I wouldn't want to deny anybody else that opportunity of having a home of their own. But that traffic problem is something I would like us all to have a look at, if that was all possible. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much. Who wants to speak next? Councillor Lowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have a number of concerns about the application as it stands at the moment. The point has been made that this land is earmarked in Part 2 of the local plan for development, and that's taken as read. But one of my concerns has already been highlighted by Councillor Hall, and indeed by the resident who spoke. I think it's naive to believe that that road would not be used as a rat run if there were a direct connection through. I note that the applicant stated that their traffic study suggested that there would only be an additional 5 vehicles at the peak time. I find that very, very hard to believe, because I think the vast majority of residents who live in what is going to be a relatively isolated part of the borough are going to have at least one car. To suggest that they are going to use the bus service, and the applicant made the point that there will be an opportunity for the bus to run through there. As Councillor Ball has said on many an occasion, there is a half-hourly service that runs through Allsworth, the number 27. And I know it because I used it the other day when I took my car in to be serviced at Ilkeston and wanted to come home whilst it was being done. That service runs every half hour and stops, I believe, early evening. And I'm not sure whether it operates very much at the weekend either. So it's a poor bus service, but it's a service that meets the requirements of the number of people that use it. So to suggest that there will be a great deal of public transport usage, I think is a nonsense. The vast majority of residents there will have at least one car, if not 2 cars. And then we turn to what would be the best way or the easiest way. Because car drivers, we're all the same. We like to take the easiest route, the simplest route. And the simplest route would not be to go on the Allsworth bypass and queue at traffic lights to turn in and out, because I understand the signal junctions are what are proposed at the moment, and I was interested in the idea of a roundabout, because they, mini roundabouts in particular, do allow, in my view, a much easier flow of traffic than do signal junctions. So I think that is something that would need to be explored. But I think the real principle has got to be that there can be no direct vehicular access, and I make the point vehicular, no direct vehicular access between this new development and the existing development down Newton's Lane. Because I know what will happen, and in your heart of hearts, the rest of you know what will happen. A lot of vehicles will use it as a rat run, because it will be easier to get out and you won't have to go down onto the bypass. So that's my first concern about that. Now, the applicant said that they had worked with the council to mitigate the effects of this development. Well, I don't dispute the fact that they have worked with the council, but when I read the report, the effects of this development have not been mitigated against, not in their entirety. And I turn, as you might expect, to the Section 106 agreement that is proposed. And I look at the request, as I have said on many an occasion, on page 46 at paragraph 6.10.20, contributions for education. Thank goodness that's not going to be my concern directly anymore, finding enough school places, because the decisions that this council have made in recent planning approvals means that there will be a shortage of places across the borough. And what you are saying here is, or what the county council is first of all saying, is that by the formulaic arrangement, a national formula just shy of £1 million should be paid in Section 106 contributions to provide sufficient secondary places. And the emphasis is on secondary, because as I've said to you before, and you always ignored me, and I've not the slightest doubt you will again tonight, but I will continue to make the point, you cannot, as the county council cannot, ask for Section 106 contributions unless there is going to be a shortage of places as a direct result of a particular planning application. And what the county council are saying is that there is going to be a shortfall of 40 places, and that is determined by a national formula. It's not a formula that they magic up or decide upon themselves. It is a national formula that all planning authorities should take note of. And so I put it to the meeting tonight. If you approve the Section 106 contributions in their current form, which is proposed at 6.10.25, where you've got just shy of £500,000 going to secondary education, the clinical commissioning groups, plus 20% affordable housing across the site, then clearly you're going to be significantly short of the amount of money that is required to provide sufficient secondary school places. So where will those children go to school? I believe there is capacity at Selston. Are you seriously suggesting that they should travel all the way from Alresford to Selston in order to access secondary education? Because that's what this report is in effect saying. And the figures for Selston may well be updated, so it could be even further afield. So that, I think, is something that we ought to be told tonight. Where will they go to school? The reason that they can't provide, the developer can't provide the full amount for secondary school places, and also a contribution for the clinical commissioning group to provide the necessary healthcare places, is because of the council's insistence on affordable housing. Now, what's the point of having an affordable house if you haven't got a school place to go to or a doctor to go to? We hear time and time again, historically, that estates that have been developed in the past, there is no infrastructure. The infrastructure isn't there. And this is exactly what is proposed in this particular report tonight, that you are wanting to push through 250 houses and insufficient infrastructure is going to be provided. Well, I'm not prepared to support that. I think the council should go away with the developer and come up with a scheme that provides not only houses on that site, but also the necessary infrastructure as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We want to go next. Councillor Cooper. Right, that's it.
I know it's probably not part of this application, but do we have we done anything at the moment with regards to the size of the houses that are being proposed? That comes in the next stage of it. Right, okay. Do we, at the next stage, advise them what our minimum standards are? Because that's something that happened in the last meeting. The first one we discussed, I can't remember it. Yeah, the houses that we passed there ended up lower than our accepted standard, lower square meterage. So that's why I'm making that point.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the difficulties that we have with minimum space standards, and we'll actually come to this when we look at the next application, is that the council don't have an adopted minimum space standard. It's unfortunate. It's something that I hope we will put right fairly shortly, and we're looking at the process for that. But at the moment, there is a national minimum space standard, but it's up to each authority to choose to adopt it. And when the Part 2 local plan was prepared, unfortunately that wasn't included. So we are on some tricky ground. But by the time that the detailed application comes in, we may well have got ahead of the game in respect of that. Okay. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. It is, of course, possible to support this application and also share the concerns that Councillor Owen has raised as well as part of his concerns to the development. The difficulty with that, of course, is that Councillor Owen, within the constraints of affordable housing, Section 106 payments, and indeed the constraints that we have through the local plan as well, he chooses to sacrifice or jettison in his solution one of those elements. It would be less contradictory in my view, and indeed the ward councillor recognises the requirement for families in the Alresworth area to have good and affordable housing to retain in the area. It would be less contradictory if Councillor Owen, of course, campaigned and supported a political position which changed the planning laws around Section 106 and allowed, of course, affordable housing to be developed as well. In that sense, we're in an imperfect situation. And in the imperfect situation, I support the application before us. But I also support a policy position, and I hope Councillor Owen will join me in the future in standing with a policy position to try and challenge the planning laws around Section 106s and indeed what developers should and shouldn't be allowed to do. So I will be supporting the development, but to try and ask to pick and choose between affordable housing for local people and or facilities is of course a very, very difficult one to choose.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ball wants to come back. Yeah.
Yes, David, Chair, sorry. Yes, I'm in a very difficult position as well because at the moment I would like to have some more work, if it were possible, of course, to have some support or some guidance on. I think I've already spoken about because it does concern me. I mean, you had a resident come along here this evening who's put his worries to this committee. I don't know what is the best way to do that, Chair, whether I ask them to go back and bring us a better solution or what to do, because I'm not happy just to leave it as it is. I'm really sorry, councillors, but that's my heart feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Carden, a point I've made to my group in our group meeting today, which is always worth repeating, is we're not whipped on this committee. We're all here to vote according to our conscience, and if your conscience takes you a particular way, then vote that way.
I know what I want to do, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
always, as usual,
The-
accommodate everybody.
The difficulty sometimes is when the heart and the head go different ways. I appreciate that. Yeah, okay. Councillor Carr.
I've got a lot of empathy with the position you're in, Council Ball, because it is a difficult one. Of course, with the local plan, as has already been mentioned, identified this site for development, and we have also got policy 15 in that local plan, which stipulates 30% affordable housing, which is 75 units on this site. However, it is an outline plan, and I'm sure that between now and when the actual reserve matters comes back, there is the possibility for your county councillors, Councillor Doddy and Councillor McGrath, to actually have negotiations with the county highways to see what we can come up with, because just because we pass this tonight and it's got in it that there's going to be access onto Newton's Lane doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to be end up as. And you know, it'd probably be a long time before we get that reserve matters back before us again. So I think the possibility is there for something to be done about that, and you know, we have to listen to what you say as the local member, and what residents say as well, and I'm sure that your county councillors will work with you on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Grindell and then Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, Councillor Carr has just said quite a lot that I was going to say, but I will say, yes, when it comes to education and where the schools are, obviously all these things are to do with the county. Our job here, obviously, is to get the best possible housing for people, the best possible affordable housing for people, and I'm sure that if this gets passed tonight, I will be voting for it, then work can be done on it. I understand Councillor Ball's scenario, but these questions can be answered, Chair, when it comes back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robertson.
Chair, I think it's fair to say, as other councillors probably alluded to, that Councillor Ball is very well respected in this chamber. She represented Ball for a long time and knows the sense of the way that people are feeling. Just so that I can get some sort of clarity, though, what Lydia is saying and the objector as well, is it right to say that there isn't a uniform objection from local residents, maybe the application per se, but there is concern, I know Council talked about education, but there is major concern about traffic egress. Is that a fair way of surmising that you're where you're at? Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Pringle.
Also on that ward council as well for all the crossing the trout. And one of the things that's concerning quite a lot of people in the village as well is the bit that Lydia alluded to earlier, which is the fact that for a couple of elections, unfortunately, the neighbourhood plan was deferred, and what that did was that deferred the referendum, and that's the situation we have in here. And what they're saying in the neighbourhood plan, what they're voting on is do you want Broxtowe Borough Council to use the neighbourhood plan for Orsworth to help it decide planning applications in the neighbourhood area? Now, if we just carry on as we are this evening, that question is really can't be answered, can it? And it's just a shame, as a ward council, it's just a shame that this has been delayed till next week, and here we are discussing something which is really sort of the biggest piece of their neighbourhood plan. So at the moment I can't support it because of this. So.
Thank you. I think I hear the point, and it's unfortunate that the timing worked out that way, that was delayed. But a neighbourhood plan has to be in accordance with the local plan, and this site is allocated in the local plan. So if I recognise the concern. I don't actually think, particularly for an outline application where it's in accordance with the local plan, it's actually a concern we need to attach a lot of weight to. By the time the detailed application comes in, the reserve matters application, then hopefully your neighbourhood plan will be adopted, and then that will carry significant weight, and the development will have to be in accordance with whatever it is that. I've not seen the neighbourhood plan yet, but it would have to be in accordance with that. Okay. The other point I wanted to make was that whilst I recognise the concern about education, I would hope that the lobbying is directed towards the government to properly fund education, because until that's done, we are always going to have difficulties. And we saw, unfortunately, today with the announcement for the catch-up, how little our current Chancellor invests or wants to invest in education. So I hope that lobbying can be directed in that direction. Unfortunately, whilst we do want developers to contribute properly, unless we make alterations that have been independently checked, then this site would not be viable. And if one comes to the decision, do we accept housing and not be able to provide all of the money that we want for education, or do we not allow that housing to go ahead? We have so many homeless in this country, including hidden homeless, that we would be betraying our obligation to them if we used the government's inability to fund education or unwillingness to fund education properly as an excuse not to build houses. I think everyone would decide, if the choice was live on the street or have a house, they'd rather have a house. Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to raise anything? Oh, Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as that gentleman pointed out there, and obviously I'll take the number of developer at the back there, and I'm quite willing to come out to Orsworth with yourself and Councillor Pringle, that gentleman there. I do know Newton's Lane because I biked up there, you know, many years ago. I know it's out of my jurisdiction a bit, and the things I've wrote down, as Councillor Owen said, is the bus service, which seems a bit, pardon the pun, willy-nilly. The ballards, which the gentleman has mentioned, and a number of things that I'm quite willing to learn and go through with the people who know them at the end of the day, and the residents, and yourself and Don, you know, don't you? So I'll set up something for the help of Councillor Donny as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bradshaw.
Yeah, just a point, Chair, thank you very much. On page 41, 685, I worry about gas prevention measures to be installed, but it's 686, it traces it down and concludes that the Coal Authority have reviewed the information received and considered further assessments of coal mining risks associated with the site should be carried out to fully demonstrate that the site is safe, stable, and suitable for development. I think that's a part of this that should grab attention. We've got the same problem in Eastwood at one of our sites, and we are worried about gases migrating. I would hate to think that people on these new houses are fast asleep in bed, suddenly combustion occurs, and they're on fire. They do say that there are certain criteria that has to be met before the buildings can go on, and that should be very much looked at and complied with. And finally, just as an aside on education, I quite easily expect kids to get on buses and go quite a way. I lived in Selston and was educated in Mansfield, and I had to catch a bus every morning. There weren't schools of appropriate quality in Eastwood at that time, so we all went to Mansfield, no problem whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The village I grew up in didn't have a school at all, so we all had to go on the bus to the nearest town to be educated. Picking up the point that you just raised on the Coal Authority, the final sentence there, of course, is they raise no objection subject to conditions. And if you have a look at condition 11, it does have the condition there to say that the appropriate measures have to be approved first. So that's dealt with, and that will all have to be done before we come to the reserved matters.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If not, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll go to the vote. In fact, Mr. Dawson, anything you want to say first? Sorry, before we,
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to you, Councillor Pringle, when they did the viability assessment, it was based on 9 1-bed, 52 2-bed, 79 3-bed, 35 4-bed. But at this stage, because it's outlined, that could change in conjunction throughout. And as you both alluded to, the space standards, we don't have a policy on it, the national space standards. So, but again, as the matters comes in, I think now the conversation, amenity, goals, provision, space standards, all of that sort of stuff will be discussed. I think it's a matter stage. That was all. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much. Well, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll take a vote. Can I see all those in favour of granting planning permission, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that is carried. 7 votes to 6. Thank you very much. Okay, now I think we're going to have a momentary break whilst we swap speakers for the next application. So just stretch your legs for a second. And thank you both very much for your participation. And if anyone's looking for the next one, it's page 127. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Page 111.
We have new reading. I shared my slide the first time she came into a meeting. So we decided that. So again, you know, I actually thought it was in my course, so I didn't want to take part in the course, but I realised. But I take them out and make up and done from to the tip, and I didn't want my ties to go into the tip. In fact, I'm maybe wearing my kipper tie next time, just to show you how far they go back. You probably could have shoes on the tie. Sweet.
Okay, I think we're ready to resume again. So thank you all very much. We've come down to item 5.2. Just before we do, just mention that Councillor Carl is here ex officio in place of Councillor Zadulovic. So he wasn't being rude by not voting, he was not in a position to vote. Okay, item 5.2, which is the old station yard, Station Road, Beeston. This is to construct 42 dwellings with improved access, provision of internal access roads, landscaping and associated work following the demolition of buildings. This was deferred at the last meeting, so I'll hand over to Mr Dawson to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do late items first, of which has been fairly lengthy late items submitted, so again, apologies for hearing my voice a bit longer. The new exchange between resident Network Rail regarding the access to storage compound, the possibility of transferring storage compound to decent sidings, keep more flexibility without parking, require circulation, drop facilities, etc. Network Rail confirms Ilkley Homes have been working with them, and they confirm they're working on a scheme to improve drop-off pickup facilities, improve access to decent station. The resident recognises the hard work involved development concerns related to Network Rail retained compounds and associated HPV access. Should be repurposed to provide more space for housing and shaded parking circulation space for rail users. Downside of moving the compound with possible complications of instance and track. So the risk of citizens and the low now other benefits. And email from the applicants, largely responding to the deferral reasons for the April committee. Internal floor space, Ilkley Homes are volumetric builder, dwellings built modules off site, transported by lorry and cranes to site for construction. Width of the modules constrained by the size of the lorry, The size of modules can't be altered, restricted to maximum width of 5.5 metres and maximum length of 12. Modules can be assembled on site in days after which the homes can be occupied. This brings significant benefits, speed of housing delivery, reduced impacts on local communities, and typically a site can be completed within a year, as opposed to traditional build of 2 years. East Midlands Housing, the end user, fully supports the house types proposed by development both in terms of design and living space. All of the proposed homes are within Homes England's tolerance of 15% of the nationally prescribed space standards, and they allow for when funding such schemes. The national size space standards are clear guidance relating to internal space to the number of bed spaces as a means of classification for assessment purposes only in designing new homes and seeking planning approval if local authorities adopt the space standards local plan. Top publication in terms of the housing optical technical standards sets out the guidance for local authorities to use and set space standards in the local plan. It requires the authorities to first identify need for internal space standards and then justify the policy. The based on evidence of size, type of dwelling, built in the area, consideration of the impact and supply and affordability on space standards, timing of the policy, development impact and related costs to meet the space standards. This guidance was not published in 2015 and the Broxtowe Planning in 2019, which does not contain reference to this. Appeal decision from Malden states the decision should only require compliance with space standards where and current local plan policy. The inspector concluded that the smaller size house probe will not harbour living conditions for future occupiers. The smaller size helps with smaller circulation areas and not the right to living conditions for future occupiers, and dismissed this as a reason for refusal. Further appeal, Braintree states they hosted and wait to attach to the space of this in their local plan policy. We will refuse one enough space, etc. Last policy requires local plan compliance. Each bedroom in 3-bed dwelling in Dalby has room for both bed and storage and space to walk around. When compared to the recommended floor area contained in the national space standards, only the second bedroom falls below the recommended floor area and does allow for a double bed. Dalby also contains downstairs toilet, ensuite, and bedroom. Other schemes submitted by the committee dealing with space standards, particularly the updated Wilson Home Development to the previous committee. And I talk about sizes there, different 74 to 86. Can understand why that scheme was accepted living conditions when there's not a scheme or not. Field Fund Stapleford approved in committee number 20, similar 3-bed scheme. Promise made that committee regarding the development of this site was allocated 40 dwellings and 42 proposed. This is the case of Brinsley 110, 115. Allocation can only be a guideline until site constraints and opportunities are fully understood. Good mix of housing on the site, each property has their own private amenity space and statutory distance to each property. All the policy requirements for infrastructure, access and amenity are met, and the scheme provides the most efficient use of this highly sustainable site. Private drives, no objections from the higher authority. Private drives have been designed to be adoptable standard. Unadoptable roads will be managed and maintained by East Midlands homes in perpetuity, along with the management of the landscaping and general appearance of the site. Private drives are considered acceptable as part of the Brinsley application to turn up in April. Impact of Eastern Station, Network Rail, landowner of the site, have entered into the agreement to sell the land to Torquay Homes, so have been involved in agreement of the content, layout and design of the scheme. They are working with Friends of Beeston Station to bring about improvements to the station and safeguard the land adjoining the site to ensure there's additional station parking and platform expansion. Network Rail are also working with East Midlands Trains to deliver a master plan to guide further improvements to the station, including mechanical refurbishment, lifts, installation of parking and turn facilities. The access to the proposed development will not prevent the planned improvements to the station turning area. The application will not be refused, and based on desire for future improvements and no statutory weight are not including any policy master plan which will allow outside the job applicants and not necessarily to make the project acceptable. We hope to try to engage with false offering to meet the time of writing now responded. Conclusion, the allocated ground for the site is a highly stable location providing 100% affordable, energy efficient housing as well as meeting all the required developer contributions. And there's a revised country survey and they're updated with no response on slide first yet. Apologies that took a while. That is a fairly good summary though, considering what we had on that one. And then, as we've already alluded to, this item was deferred from the previous committee for clarity on certain points and from concerns raised by members. The scheme's come back unchanged, and just summarising the late items, applicants justify the reasons for this. Bramford site close to the station, and we've been trying to bring it forward for several years. Allocated site, 100% affordable housing location really needs affordable housing. And we are content, planning department, scheme 42, when it's allocated to 40. Mix of terrace and semi-detached properties, and which are 2 and 3 bed. all dwellings with outdoor space and access to a parking space. 71 spaces for 42 dwellings. Housing is similar scale and designed to other houses in the area. Are they largely constructed off-site and then finished on-site? And again, as I explained, amenity. So there are no issues here in terms of impacts on the wider area, and we think it's acceptable. All have access to external amenity space and a reasonable outlook. The 3 beds, as we've described, fall marginally short of accepted space standards, but it's within the 15% tolerance set by Homes England to enable them to fund the scheme. And as the dwellings will have external amenity space, which is not considered for space standards, we don't believe that we should be justified to refuse the scheme. No stakeholder objections and high-risk objections suggest conditions. The access, the existing drop-off base for the station will be removed and double lines will be added to facilitate the access into the scheme. Network round involved throughout, again, summarising late items. They've also safeguarded some land for parking and some land future development for the station. And proceeds from the sale of the site will go towards this. The scheme does not propose private drives, although as these will be managed by the same management company that will manage the houses and design terms are acceptable and indeed endorsed by design guides such as managed streets, we again do not believe this to be an issue. It's adjacent to the railway line, so there's also going to be issues of noise, but there's acoustic fence provided and standard contamination conditions apply. The sustainability arguments are pretty good. Modular build, advantage of being built quickly, off-site, delivered to the final assembly, quicker build, and it's a 20% more efficient in terms of gas electric usage than traditionally built homes. Section 6, fully affordable site, although all other requests as outlined in part 6.10 of the report have been agreed to and will be paid. That is all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I will move the recommendation, which is the Grant Plan Commission.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And now to the applicant, Emily Christie. Would you like to come over to the microphone? And although it's hidden at the other side, there is a chair if you would like to use it.
Thank you.
Okay. So once you're ready, you have 3 minutes. And I think actually that microphone's on because the red light's shining at the top. So
Okay.
I'll give you a prompt towards the end if you look like you're going to be overrunning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I'm Head of Planning at Ilka Homes, the applicants for the scheme. Following on from the committee meeting in April, I feel there's a number of points that need to be addressed. One of the key issues being the scheme's compliance with national space standards. It's clear that there's no policy within the Broxtowe local plan currently to meet floor space standards. And because of this, the issue has not been raised by officers at any point during the pre-app or through the application process. It should be noted that all of our 2-bed properties fully comply with NDSS standards, and the 3-bed property falls within the tolerances accepted by Homes England. Whilst the Dolby house type is smaller than the standards, it will provide more than adequate living conditions. It has 2 double bedrooms and a single bedroom, all with storage and circulation space, and 3 bathrooms, something which will be to the benefit of many families. East Midlands Housing are happy with the living accommodation provided. Homes England are happy with the product as they'll be funding it, and this house type has been accepted by local authorities throughout the country. In addition, we note that this committee has accepted and permitted smaller 3-bed properties on recent schemes. The 3-bed properties at Brinsley granted at the last committee had floor areas of 75 and 76 square metres. That's 6 square metres smaller than the Dolby. So we do not understand why they were acceptable there and the Dolby is not here. I think it's important to point out that the Dolby is comparable size and layout to the 3-bed dwellings on the Malting site also. We also note that the number of houses proposed was queried by the committee at 42 rather than 40. The site allocation was a guide rather than a maximum figure, and now that the site opportunities and constraints are fully known and a master planning exercise has been undertaken, it's clear that the site can accommodate 42 homes, each with its own garden and parking, and provision for infrastructure and landscaping. In relation to the provision of private drives on the development, East Midlands Housing will be responsible for the maintenance of the private roads and have an obligation which will be secured within the 106 to maintain them in perpetuity, with little or no additional costs to residents, given that the dwellings will be of affordable tenures. Throughout the course of the application, we've diligently addressed issues raised by officers, such that there are no objections from statutory and non-statutory consultees, including the Highway Authority and Network Rail. What you have before you is a proposal which not only remediates a long-term brownfield site, but provides 42 affordable homes and a full suite of Section 106 contributions, whilst respecting the future plans that Network Rail has for Beeston Station. We therefore respectfully invite you to agree with your officer's recommendation and support the delivery of 42 new homes for families who really need them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Would you like to take a seat? And turn now to Councillor Robert Thompson to speak, who is the chair of Friends of Beeston Station. Yes.
Chair, I'll sit down because the recording isn't very good outside, I'm afraid, so I do hope the speakers can be heard, but it's not good if you stand up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We will bear that in mind for the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Yes. Chair, I'm not impressed by this report. At our meeting or your meeting of the 21st of April this year, it was a very good debate, and there were 4 issues of concern about this proposal. But there were too small, too many, unadopted roads and dangerous access.
Oh, I think we've lost your microphone.
I think that the microphone's gone.
Back.
And dangerous access. The issue, the committee decided to defer these matters to address these issues, but this has not happened. My concern is particularly about the access to Beeston Station. Now, if I can just remind my members of, it's gone again.
It's gone, yeah. Yeah, you might go.
Can I just stop?
I'll stop the clock as well.
Thank you. Can I just remind members of the Beeston Station is not a tin pot little station. It has 250,000 passengers going through, either passenger journeys either from platform 1 to going towards Nottingham or the ticket office. So it's a very busy station, and we actually lose pick-up and drop-off spaces, waiting areas, footpaths, because this road is a dead end, and all cars, most of passengers are dropped off by car, have to turn around. The access, the issue there that you can see on the map there is that there is not a turning circle, and all cars who come into the site therefore have to back out and do so directly in line of the traffic that's coming off the development. Chair, I would like members of the committee to imagine a scenario of possibly a couple of years' time of a representative of the developer and a conversation going on in a pub, and I certainly hope this doesn't happen. And the conversation might go like this. Pity about the latest accident at the station. Whiplash injury, but pretty nasty. Yes, we shouldn't have got away with it, really. Got away with what? Well, access to the site was from Waterloo Road, but that would have cost us too much money, so we moved it to opposite the station. However, that wasn't very good, as there were bottlenecks at the station and the huge congestion there in peak times. But the council let us get away with it and didn't challenge us when we said that the lack of turning circle was outside the development site and therefore not our responsibility.
You've got about 30 seconds left.
Yeah, so they've changed the rules. You know, it's a pity about the accident, but what should have happened is that Network Rail, the County Council, Broxtowe Borough Council and the developers should have sat down together and put in, had some leadership from the Broxtowe and had a turning circle put in so that it was safe both for the residents of the development and for all the station users as well. And that's what we particularly want. We cannot accept this proposal as it is because it
Can you start winding us down?
because it's dangerous for passengers and residents alike. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, well, it's been moved and seconded, so I'll open up the debate. So who would like to go first? Anyone? Councillor Carr.
Just addressing the highways issue that Councillor Thompson has just raised. If the councillors look at page 130 for section 5.2, it will be very difficult for this council to actually refuse this application on highways grounds, because the county council, the highways authority, have actually accepted the layout of the road. And that, of course, isn't our remit as a borough council, that's a county council duty. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grindell.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, regarding the situation when we were here last time, or when we discussed this last time, not a lot has changed, but the 42 houses are, I'd say, reasonable. I wouldn't say brilliant, but a reasonable size room. And of course, we have to go by our own guidelines at the moment. So I have no problem with this application, and I feel that if we do not, Chair, if we do not pass this tonight, then obviously there will be an appeal, and I'm afraid that we would lose. So I am suggesting that members actually vote for this particular application, so that we can get on building houses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Safety is, of course, an important issue, but it is a little tenuous to say that this development should stand or fall on the turning circle, which is effectively just under the bridge on the northern side of the railway line. In actual fact, that turning circle, that diagram doesn't quite show it. The plan of the development with the turning circle on it shows it better. There are actually two temporary, that one there, there are, at the squareness of that turning circle at the bottom there's actually two temporary parking spaces, and if there's anybody who knows who frequents that station, is if there are cars parked temporarily in those spaces, the turning circle is already null and void, and in effect it precludes that circle being used, certainly without mounting the curb under the bridge. And indeed what actually happens is the cars effectively three-point turn in that space there. And this development, I don't think then prevents the current status quo of how traffic flows or is managed through that area. So in effect the argument then I think turns to one of, is this site right for development? Well, yes. Anybody who's known that site for a long time knows that the space is a current eyesore, and Network Rail, of course, would be happy to work with the developers and the authority to make that viable. And the second element, of course, is, does this meet much needed housing requirements of the local population? And yes, it does. The third element, of course, is I'm a supporter of the principle of modular development. There are environmental benefits of modular development as well, and therefore accepting that there are some compromises to be made on, in an ideal world, around space and space standards. The actual benefits of the development, in my view, far outweigh those not insurmountable concerns, and I'll be supporting this proposal.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Owen, Philip Owen.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Grindell said that this application came before us at our last meeting when it was deferred, and it's come back and not a lot has changed. Well, I've yet to find anything that's changed. the applicant has gone away and said, I'm not taking the slightest bit of notice of your concerns. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pest you by lobbying you. I don't know how many emails I had from them, and then I had a telephone call, more or less demanding I turn up to some presentation, which I declined to do. So, we're back to square one, as I always thought we would be, and I assume the applicant feels that they're going to get this passed anyway, without taking any notice of the concerns that were raised. Now, they comment that on analysis, the site which was earmarked for 40 dwellings in the Part 2 local plan, in fact, on further analysis, can accommodate 42. But of course, if you don't build the houses to the right size, you can accommodate more, can't you? You could accommodate 50, 60 if you shrank the existing accommodation that you are proposing to build there. And they admit that, I think it was the 3 bedrooms are below the standard. And it doesn't matter because this council's approved other developments that are below standard. I think we're going to be getting a reputation as a council for approving developments that are below appropriate standards, all in the interest of getting the numbers game moving forward. So I don't accept that whatsoever. And we're told that they can't build the houses, 3-bedroom houses, to the correct standard, the recommended standard, because they are prefabs in effect and are built off-site and they'll be too big to transport on a lorry. Which is quite funny really when you look at that picture up there and see it next to a railway track, where you would expect that large items might be delivered by rail and offloaded onto the site. So I don't accept that as an excuse. And then, yet again, we've got the issue of unadoptable roads or unadopted roads. And we're told they're built to an adoptable standard. I think, if I heard correctly, that's what was said. They are built to an adoptable standard. But if they're built to an adoptable standard, then they should be adopted. Why not? If you're building them to an adoptable standard, then the county council will adopt them. So if the county council aren't going to adopt them, then I don't believe they are going to be built to adoptable standard. And the applicant says, oh well, county highways are very happy with that arrangement. But if you go to somebody and say, look, I'm going to provide what you would normally have to maintain, but I don't want you to maintain it. No, we're going to maintain it ourselves. Are you happy with that? What do you think they're going to say? Oh no, we're not happy with that. But the people that will suffer will be the residents long term, because those roads will deteriorate irrespective of what standard they're built to now, or built at now. They will deteriorate. They will not have the appropriate facilities. And eventually, work will have to be done on them. And somebody has got to pay, and it will be the residents that have got to pay. So they'll be paying twice. They'll be paying their council tax, and then they will be surcharged for ongoing repairs. Have we not learnt lessons, well, I don't think we have in this council, about unadoptable, unregulated accommodation? I'm afraid we haven't, because I've no doubt that this will be pushed through yet again. Substandard, below standard, shall we say, below standard accommodation in terms of space, in some cases, cramming more onto a site, unadoptable roads. Well, I'm not going to support that because it's a disaster waiting to happen for the future.
Thank you very much. find myself very torn with this. As I said at the last meeting, I really want to support this application. I like the idea of modular building. It's modular, not prefabricated, and it is the way to go. But if having modular building means that effectively we have to build smaller houses because they can't fit on the back of the lorry, then I am concerned that we're storing up problems. I am disappointed that the applicants haven't amended anything in the plan. I agree with what Councillor Owen said about the effectively the hard sell of trying to get us to accept it. So I do find myself very torn, because what I don't want to do is say no if this is something that we should be supporting. Equally, I don't want to say yes to something that is not appropriate. I take on board what has been said, particularly by Councillor Marshall, about the access. I travel a lot from that station, so I'm fully aware of the difficulties of people moving, particularly when a train comes in and lots of people are getting into their cars and others are being picked up, and there is 10 minutes of chaos at the arrival of every train as people try and get in and out of the road. So I do have that in mind as well. I don't think that this proposal will make that so much worse that I would refuse it on that ground. So it comes down to weighing up the issue of the size of the buildings, and that's what I'm still struggling with in my own mind. Anybody else wish to speak? No, if not, we're going to have to then move to the vote, so I'm going to have to make a decision. Mr. Dawson, anything you want to come back on?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As we said a few times, but the elements outside of the site are outside the control of the applicant, which is unfortunate. There was a bit, to go back to the map, there was a bit of land outside of control that Little Railway retaining right next to the railway line that they're proposing to do more parking on the hashed area here. Now again, that's not part of this plan application, can't be conditioned, can't be sorted. However, my understanding is that's going to be used as parking, which should solve the issues of the two spaces in terms of that issue. And I know that Neil Bradley's talking to okay about this. The other issue on private drives, whilst I do understand some of the concerns historically with private drives and what's happened with them, I think the possibility here is that the site's been managed by a housing company once everything's finished, and they're going to manage the whole site. So I think issues we've had with some private drives in the past in some areas is that they've been managed by different companies. Here, the management company managed the housing, the site, the landscaping, everything. So I don't think it'll be much of an issue. That's what I have to say on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Well, it's been moved and seconded. Can I see those in favour, please? 6. And those against, please. One abstention. So that is carried 7 votes to 5 with 1 abstention. Thank you very much. So we're now going to have another short break whilst people move around again. I'm going to vacate the seat and hand over to Councillor McGrath, who will take the next item, which is 42 Sandy Lane, which is page 153 of the agenda.
I suggest to see that screen there. So then we can take others as well.
All the shoes are in the wash.
Sorry, that code is like this one. Yeah.
coming in.
You do have a job.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor John Grant. I'm Vice Chair of the committee. I will chair this actual item tonight, 5.3, as Councillor Watts has declared an interest. The item is 42 Sandy Lane, Branker, and Ryan or Mr Dawson will introduce this item to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For a change, there are no late items. So I'll go through them. This was deferred for site visit number 44 from last time around, so it's the neighbouring property. Those of you may recall we've already reviewed it 42, but we didn't put up these mixing neighbours with maximum number 44. It's first floor extension with front rear doors. Scheme's been amended during the course of the application. Please look at page 170 of the report. That's wrong. The dimensions are outlined within the report. The extension has been amended to reduce the projection of the first floor extension next to number 44. So the first floor only projects 2.6 metres from the existing rear wall of the main house. There will be an impact, we're not disputing that, in both the bearing on both 44 to the north and 40 to the south. But due to the scale of development and the large gardens, we don't believe this is overly significant or justifiable to warrant refusing the scheme. The design is acceptable as are both builders on the revised scheme. And therefore we recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. We have one public speaker, but just before that, I would like to move the item. Could I have a seconder, please?
Second that, Chair.
Right, the public speaker is Mr Mark Knowles. You know what to do, Mark, don't you?
I'm sure I can show.
Someone will show you.
Thank you.
And you've got 3 minutes, Mark, no time. Please. So when you're ready, Mr Knowles, just...
Certainly, press that.
Right, thank you, mate. Go on.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing me today. I live at 44 Sandy Lane, so it's a direct neighbour. As such, and the impact on our house will be substantial. We've been massively affected by the application, and hopefully those of the committee that were able to come to 44 Sandy Lane today, and I thank them for that, will be able to appreciate our concerns and obviously the position that we'll be faced with, notably a 2-storey brick wall which will block light, dominate the landscape and enclose our property. And the patio area, and I simply hope that those who attended today perhaps see it from our point of view and appreciate why we have the concerns and object as we do. The proposed development is of such magnitude, one might have thought that the neighbours would come and explain what plans they were putting forward before they were submitted. Sadly, that didn't happen. The first we knew was when the planning application came through the post. Disappointing perhaps not to have prior notice, given the effect it's bound to have on our property. We've lived at Stat 44 Sandy Lane for 30 years now, and my wife has redeveloped the garden, the patio area, and to be fair, it's her pride and joy. We've enjoyed the area, and that's particularly under threat of the loss of light throughout. We have many family events around that area. It's the barbecue area, which will be blocked by this particular extension, and also the conservatory, which will be massively affected, particularly in these times when everybody's encouraged to stay at home and socialise at home. It will have a real impact. The sun is at its best for that particular area between 12 and 3, and the 2-storey extension will block light to that area. Parts of the certainly the conservatory and the patio area will be in constant shade, and the 2-storey extension will be right up to the fence in the main, and certainly dwarf the conservatory, which will have no light whatsoever, as well as the loss of privacy, which we've had for some 30 years. It will clearly affect the way we enjoy the property. In fairness, we're somewhat perplexed at the position that we find ourselves in, given that the planning officer who visited indicated that it would be put forward to be approved.
I outlined our view to the planning officer who visited, and she accepted fully that we would have loss of life, privacy, and the feeling of being enclosed. I was hoping that I'd read the amended plans incorrectly. I hadn't, and that she accepted we'd be badly affected. But given the amendment, she felt that it not significantly enough and would be supporting the application. As you can perhaps imagine, we were somewhat surprised and disappointed given the amended plans show very little difference from the original rear extension proposal, and we'd still be facing a 2-storey brick wall. The loss of light, the
30 seconds, Bob.
certainly, and the lack of privacy were all accepted by the planning officer, and those factors, as I understand it, they should be taken into account, certainly in the planning material I was sent. I would hope that the committee will appreciate they all apply in this case. It's difficult to see how the effect on us could be not significant. One would say it couldn't be any more significant, and I would hope that those who visited today and the committee looking at the plans will appreciate the detrimental effect it would have on us, and I would urge the committee to certainly refuse this particular application.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much for your time. So I'll now open it to debate. Anyone would like to speak? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a pretty big, massive property. This is going to be once it's been amended. I mean, if you look at it at the moment, they've got very, very small windows at the top, and in the application, the rear view, which that is at the moment, has got one heck of a window that's going to be there, which surely has got impact on the amenity and the privacy of the neighbouring properties. And you know, I think, yeah, people can, you know, have realistic and extension to their properties, but I think this is absolutely huge. And I think in an area like Sunday Lane, where the houses are all actually quite fairly close together, although they are big, to actually come along and then want to make it even bigger and turn a single-storey extension into a 2-storey extension is just too far. It clearly will impact on the conservatory at 44. You can see that on page 162 by the picture, and I, quite honestly, I think this is just too much to accept.
Anyone else? Councillor Grindle.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, truthfully, it's a bit of a monstrosity, to be honest. And I think that possibly if they want to do some extension or some changes, I think they ought to go back and look at it and reapply. I couldn't vote for this tonight, Chair, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Grindle. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Willimore.
Thank you. Yeah. I was there this afternoon, and I'm glad I did go actually, but I was appalled by the quality of the drawings. This is a lousy submission actually, and we're getting too much of this kind of thing. Even now, looking at it, and having been to the site, it's still not clear what's going on here, but I'm pretty sure this is gross overdevelopment, and I'm going to vote against it.
Anyone else like to speak now? Or we'll go to the vote now. Those in favour? Four. Those against? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Knowles.
happy to invite our visitors or the data on that.
Okay, are we
Okay, I think we're ready to resume, so thank you very much, Councillor McGrath, for chairing that one. We move then to item 5.4, which is an application to construct 3 houses and 2 apartments with associated parking and drop curbs, including the provision of new driveway to existing cottage and demolition of single-storey extension. And that's Fishpond Cottage, Fishpond Ilkeston Road in Bramcote. You'll notice that this is a Regulation 3 application, which means it's a property, an application submitted by the council. So, I'm going to ask Mr Dawson to introduce this to us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm sorry, there's quite a lot of late items on this, so please bear with me. A covering letter regarding a signed petition rejecting developments being received by email. People Council's copied in on it. Petition of 180 signatures received by post, raising the following concerns: siting capable of accommodating additional dwellings, impact on light, space and privacy, no need for development, additional adverse impact on services, particularly education, council housing department neglect of Fishpond Cottage, and this cannot be the use of reason for allowed development. Cottage of significant local interest and non-designated heritage asset. Design and appearance of new build South Campton Cottage on synthetic setting. Loss of landscaping and biodiversity will impact on ecosystems and value of recreation over the land integral to the area's form, context and sense of place. Alterations to Ilkeston Road and Oakland Court Junction make Ilkeston Road more dangerous. Family homes too close to Ilkeston Road and appropriate occupation by families with children. Concerns of safeguarding of vulnerable elder residents in adjacent sheltered accommodation. And proposal contravenes policies 8, 10, 11, 17 of the alarm cost strategy. No assessment of existing buildings' contribution to the area. A covering letter as well, summarised as follows. They welcome Broxtowe Borough Council's decision not to demolish the cottage. Building 3 houses and 2 apartments for 20 people is not welcome. Location is inappropriate and site incapable of accommodating any additional housing. Broxtowe Council showed greater creativity in development of the site. In 2017, the council made a decision to sell the cottage and develop half the garden surrounding land for venture-friendly bungalows. No explanation has been given as to why this development has not been pursued. Lack of transparency. Any additional building will impact on light, space and privacy between buildings, creating overbearing presence on 2 flats. The Council's housing department neglected maintenance of the cottage and now seeks to use the current state of property as a material factor to value the property as a heritage asset. The property owner cannot rely on their own default. Therefore, the current sale of property must be disregarded as a factor in making judgments on the cost of setting. Development of field farm and proposed development to both sides of Country Lane of approximately 1,200 homes will include approximately 30% affordable housing and necessary to develop the site for affordable housing. Additional housing of 1,200 homes has wide impact on services, in particular education. The additional pupils, however small a number, is not sensible. No mention has been made to show that Broxtowe Council has given this proper consideration. Ilkeston Road is a narrow major thoroughfare that carries heavy traffic daily and only increases with the disturbance of Phil Farm and Country Lane, making the road even dangerous. The existing junction at Oakland Court and Ilkeston Road is always difficult to turn right out of, and the proposed hedging and new tree in front of your house will exacerbate this. Cottage is of significant local interest and is a non-designated heritage asset. Definition of heritage asset includes historic buildings of special interest or means to the community. It's demonstrated by over 100 rejections of the original proposal to demolish the cottage. Position of the new build in proximity to the cottage creates a visual screen to the heritage asset and has a negative impact on its setting. Computer-generated images of the proposed houses suggest that development will create a rural idyll. Proposed family houses are too close to Ilkeston Road and therefore inappropriate for occupation for families. Proposed houses are not being keeping with adjacent properties in regard to distance from the curb line, will not contain building line and line of sight. No regard given to scale, form, context of the existing site and surroundings. Land and uniform development. Obliterates existing built form, removing all existing landscaping, biodiversity impacts on ecosystems and maintenance of the pond, trees, and small, highly valued recreational parkland area. The open and permeable site extends beyond the curve of the existing property, includes open land, integral to the area's form, context, and sense of place. Proposal includes garden grabbing and development of the site. Design and appearance of the new builds is out of character to the cottage and the surroundings. Fails to record policy 17 of the Part 2 local plan and policies 8, 10, 11, and 17 of the core strategy. Council agreed under the core strategy, along with Getting Nottingham, to have common standards for development, and the public audit regarding the preferred development of Broadmarsh showed that public wanted nature and heritage to be primary focus. Council should undertake wider public consultation before making decisions about this project. That the cottage has been empty for some time and now derelict needs to be addressed, but not at the expense of making ill-advised decisions. It appears the council are using COVID and austerity restrictions as a backdrop to streamline administrative planning procedures at the expense of proper consultation, which undermines the democratic process. There's been no assessment or feasibility of the existing buildings' contribution to the area. Sorry, you're there. COVID has shown the importance of open spaces and associated facilities for public recreation and amenity. This should be used to the site given this cottage's proximity to the park. Having allowed greenbelt land at Phil Farm to be used for high density housing, it is important that the Broxtowe Council does not allow urban creep and cramming some of the beauty of local photography. Bramford Cricket Club should be contacted to see if the cottage and grounds would be interested in as their premises, their ability to cope with the current needs. Cottage is the oldest building in Bramford Conservation Area and has heritage value. Building houses on the site will be regretted by future generations. Some residents feel it should be Bramford Cultural Heritage Centre, in addition to the cafe and toilet facilities already being discussed at Bramford Hills Park. Parking and access to the facilities are already inadequate. Houses have been flooded recently, resulting in some residents being temporarily rehoused whilst repairs are carried out. Severn Trent need to give assurances that any proposed developments will not exacerbate the situation. The CAP meeting in March was informed that the signed anonymous letter had been circulated to residents. The letter was untruthful, counterproductive with the views of those who seek to satisfactory resolution for future use of the site. The council demolished Bramford Hills House over 50 years ago, and more recently cottages to make way for the Memorial Garden. It appears the council are inclined to destroy heritage assets in favour of other considerations. Insufficient consultation, both in length and time, the number of residents consulted, and lack of site notice. Out-of-date consultation letter was displayed at the site and now removed, so lack of contact details for residents. Neighbours, some of the council's most vulnerable residents, and the council needs to be mindful of this when making decisions, as most residents are elderly and many do not have access to instant email, and suggest they write their comments and take them to the council offices means they are disadvantaged. Some residents have complained to Ruth Hyde about the overall poor conduct of the council. Council are being manipulative, hiding behind bureaucracy, and avoiding full scrutiny. Trying to save them time and cost, discriminator and those who are aged, have poor health, are unemployed, or suffer social discrimination. Thank you for everyone on that. I do have to say that the previous scheme was summarised versions. We have done our best to put these precise notes, but there's a lot coming in. In terms of planning department's view, it's 3 houses and 2 apartments, and it was Taylor Cottage, the removal of a small rear extension of those on site. All the proposed new houses will have front and rear gardens. The executive summary in the report 1.3 covers the main issues in terms of the issues are here. The Conservation Officer initially raised concerns, but doesn't raise an objection to the scheme, whilst it does raise some concerns about the different variety of the styles proposed, particularly the roof. They do not want a factory small copy of the existing building. 6.3.1 of the report covers this point, and the site is relatively isolated from other dwellings along Broxtowe Road. The variation in roof heights does not affect the rhythm of development locality. In the opinion of the planning authority, the existing cottage is not listed or a conservation asset, but following consultations is proposed to be retained. There are no amenity issues. Some limited loss in formal open space, but there are significant areas of open space immediately next to it and opposite. There are several objections which are outlined in the report and I've just gone through a lot. Some of those objections refer to a tendency of future occupiers, which I state is not something the planning can control or should control. Nevertheless, whilst housing scheme to the rear, the wider locality is family homes. Consultation, just on that, the estates did a pre-planning consultation towards being invited with the planning consultation, which is a separate process. A site notice was put up with a notice board on there and plans put up, so I don't believe the issues in terms of consultation. We can take the scheme recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, I shall move the recommendation, which is to approve planning permission.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And firstly, speaking on this, we have Mr. Goodrick, who is the applicant from the council. Peter, are you ready? Right, thank you.
Broxtowe Borough Council adopted its housing delivery plan in 2019. Phase 1 of the plan identified underused land that could be developed for new council housing. This included 51 Ilkeston Road, Browncote and the surrounding land. In 2018, the Social and Affordable Housing Needs Study commissioned by the council and used as evidence for the local plan identified a need for 268 new affordable homes per year in the borough. In 2021, about 30 new affordable homes, affordable housing units were completed in the borough. The Fishbowl Cottage site has been subject to several proposals over the years, and the Housing Committee have approved the submission of the current scheme, which consists of 2 3-bed houses, 2 1-bed flats, and 1 3-bed wheelchair chalet bungalow house. The most pressing housing need in Broxtowe is for general needs accommodation for single people and families, and this proposal will help meet a small proportion of that need. It will also meet the need for wheelchair family accommodation, which is in very, very short supply in the borough. This proposal will also support a balanced community in the area. The proposed layout went through a radical change last year following an extensive consultation exercise with local residents, and the current proposals look to retain the cottage, as well as considerable repositioning of parking and garden layout. The Housing Department is working towards a goal of refurbishing the cottage to make it an example of what can be achieved on older solid walled properties to achieve high levels of energy efficiency ahead of the target for all homes to be net zero carbon by 2050. The 5 will be retained as council housing, as a council property. The 5 new build homes will also benefit from air source heat pumps and photovoltaic panels as the Housing Department looks to decarbonise its new properties ahead of the 2050 target. They will also be built to the National Design Space Standards, which is comparable to the old Park and Morris standards. Properties along Ilkeston Road consist of privately owned 2-storey houses. 20 flats at Oakland Court, immediately to the southwest of the site, are general needs properties. I believe that general needs properties, not independent living properties. Indeed, a number have been bought under right to buy legislation. The 15 bungalows at Ashbourne Close to the south of the proposed development are designated as independent living homes, as are the 20 flats at Westbourne Court, located approximately 90 metres to the west of the site. The 16 flats at Trenton Close, about 70 metres away from the site, have recently been designated as independent living units and are now generally properties but with a sensitive letting policy of over 50s on those flats. The council's housing department will look to implement a local lettings policy for the new homes being provided at Fishpond Cottage. That, if it gets approval, that is sensitive to the needs of the immediate area. And again, I'll just reinforce that. The council will look to implement a local lettings policy for the new homes being provided at the cottage, Fishpond Cottage, that is sensitive to the needs of the immediate area. The council owns over 1,300 independent living units. In 2018, sheltered housing. In 2018, Housing Committee approved the recommendations of an independent review of the retirement living service, and included the recommendation that given the issues of low demand compared to supply and the unsuitability of some of the current sheltered housing, some of the stock should be de-designated. In June last year, Housing Committee agreed to de-designate a number of independent living schemes, and as mentioned earlier, this has happened locally at Trenton Close. So in summary, the priority housing need in the borough is for general needs accommodation, including housing flats, and this proposal aims to make a small indent into meeting this need by providing high quality homes for social rent.
Thank you, Peter. And so would you like to take your seat and now turn to Kim Melville-Smith? Kim, do you want to take that seat? Thank you. And again, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll give you a prompt to see if we're getting close to the time.
You will need that. Good morning, thank you for your time. My name is Kim Melville-Smith. I'm directly affected by this proposal and was representing some very scared, vulnerable and residents in this area. Thank you, Mr. Dawson, for the points that have been conveyed by the Helena and Barry Johnsons, where it said that 175 people have been opposed to this. Please may I reiterate that that site board that was put up to explain what was going only done after request. That was not part of it. We had to request that in order to gain understanding of what was going on. Any additional buildings adjacent to the cottage would have significant impact on the light, space and privacy between the buildings. The original distance given by Sue Heron was 18.8 metres from the flats to the houses and 12 to 14 metres from the bungalows to the apartments, which is below the minimal acceptable distance deemed by the Broxtowe Borough Council, which just deemed an unacceptable loss of privacy and unnecessary intrusion into the occupants of the private lives. We stated about the junction being very dangerous. That road is extremely, extremely fast. And when the original depiction of the artists of children playing alongside that road, we have recorded people actually going down on that campaign, on that speed limiter of 40 to 50 miles an hour. The proximity of those houses to a very busy road is an inappropriate occupation for family homes. It really and truly is. The vulnerable residents there are many vulnerable residents there, are likely to have some barriers in social interaction which could cause potential safeguarding issues with the families over there. Even though, as we said, the cottage being a listed building, there are over 100 responses to the opposition of its demolition, and the position to the new builds in close proximity just creates a visual screen to the character. There is a concern about it stating initially keeping the cottage. However, we know sometimes plans can change, which we are well aware of, and the demolition of this, and also there's been proposals, and we have this in writing, that it could be used as a halfway house for certain individuals, which again could cause a safeguarding concern. We do know that and acknowledge that there is a need for affordable housing and an integration of community. We are well aware of that. However, the peaceful and tranquility of this area is vital to ensure and maintain the mental and physical health of the elderly and vulnerable residents. And we need affordable housing, but this proposal is not necessarily suitable. And we are thinking, yes, as we stated,
30 seconds left.
Thank you. We are stating, the proposal of the bungalows was much more, something that the residents were much more open to. And if this is approved, there's going to be a generation of people feeling that they're even more forgotten and insignificant. They're going to have a detrimental impact on their mental and their physical health. And we do honestly believe that there will be significant rise in safeguarding as well as health and safety concerns in this area with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to take your seat? Okay. Okay, you're going to have a trio of comments from local councillors. I think Councillor Land is going to go first, and then Councillor Tyler afterwards.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to update the committee with King's comment about the number of signatures to the petition objecting to this development. It's actually 180. I've received an email for an update this evening from Barry and Helen Johnson. As has been outlined, the original proposals from the Housing Department were for many more homes to be built on this site and the demolition of the cottage. Which drove a lot of interest from the local community last summer and in the autumn in the consultation. So I'm pleased to see in this proposal that the cottage will be maintained and with the hope to develop it for future use. I have concerns about the overbearingness of this site compared to the properties in the surrounding area, and have concerns that the distance between particularly the apartments and the existing apartment block that King lives and others will be too close, blocking lights and causing intrusion to those residents. I've had contact from many residents in the local area who are frightened and concerned about this development and the impact it will have on their lives. And I feel as a council we have a duty of care towards those residents who enjoy a peaceful, quiet existence in those existing properties. The housing development itself sits very close to Ilkeston Road, which has already been highlighted as a busy sort of bypass connecting Stapleford with Trowell and Bramcote and Bramcote Island. Vehicles often go at very excess speeds along that road, so the original pictures depicted by the architects in the development, which pictured children playing by the side of the road, caused no end of upsetting concern again to local residents. And it was disappointing with the current designs to see, although a welcome reduction in the number of properties, not much change in terms of the appearance, which will look quite different to the existing property at Fishpond Cottage. As a Borough Councillor, I accept that there has to be some development of this site, but would ask the committee to consider deferring this decision for maybe some bungalows or alternative accommodation, which isn't quite as overbearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, turn now to Councillor Ian Tyler.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Am I still on?
Yeah. You're on? Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to sit? Because it's not picking very well through the other room if you stood. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I echo my colleague's remarks, but my principal reason for wanting to speak on this is that, as I know you are, I'm very familiar with this building. It's one which I've been inside and looked at, and it will be a difficult building to bring up to modern standards, and that commitment has been given to the council to us, which I think is good. The initial outline drawings that, or visualizations of what the adjacent new builds would be, were frankly horrific. What we see there now is, yes, it's an improvement, but it's what it seems to be forgetting is that the very thing that people wanted to preserve is, yes, but we'll leave it unique. Well, if you're going to develop, I think you have to be sympathetic to what lies on either side. I don't know if those are the actual final designs, or are they just indicators?
No, they're the final designs.
Well, I can't support that, definitely not. And one thing which intrigues me, the roof line of the cottage runs lengthways, the buildings to the side the roof lines run the other way. Now, generally speaking, you're looking at cottage to the left, it goes that way. Now you've got the apexes, which are at the ends, being at the front. That in itself I find, I'm not an architect, but I find that jarring. I think something which is actually going to have to be reminiscent of the cottage itself is what is required. And I don't see that as being inadmissible. I mean, we all look at our chocolate tins and say, well, isn't that pretty? And I think that's why so many people feel so emotional about the cottage itself. The only two major historical features that I found walking around it is there is an original boot scraper built into the front door. It's quite distinctive. At the back of the building, there's still the original pump and tank for the stable. So it's a building with merit, but I should think it was probably a Barratt build of its day. No offence to Barratt builders, some of them were a bit ditty. So I think that really, I'm not against having accommodation for people who need it, but not at any cost. And I think that the design really does need to be looked at anew. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll open it up for debate, and as I'm the third ward councillor there, I'm going to go first. And I agree entirely with what my two ward colleagues have said. I am really disappointed with the designs that have been put forward here. They do not sit comfortably in that area. I think this scheme fails on a number of reasons. Firstly, it is not sympathetic to the cottage. Secondly, it's not sympathetic to the area. The wider area may be family homes, but the immediate area, which includes all of the development behind, is very much retirement, special needs, and independent living. And so, had this been what was originally discussed with 4 dementia-friendly bungalows, I would have been pushing this all guns blazing, but it's not. These are too big. Putting it bluntly, they're ugly. They will absolutely jar on Ilkeston Road. The rest of the housing there is set well back from the road. It was built in the 1930s primarily. It has the look of 1930s development, and what we have now is, or what's proposed here, is something that just doesn't work in that area. It has no relationship to that area at all. The impact on the neighbours, as Ms Melville-Smith said, will be significant. The bedroom windows will effectively, of the existing flats, will effectively lose all their light, and we could have done something much, much better. I do, in the late items, I do, on behalf of the council, reject the blame for the demolition of Bracket Hill's house, given that that was demolished before this council was even created. So I don't think we can really be blamed for that. But, and it is unfortunate that there was the scaremongering by somebody acting maliciously about what the cottage would be used for. But putting those aside, there have been some very valid comments made about the speed of traffic there, the closeness to the road of this housing. The pictures showing the children playing on the road frankly look like they should have been run over 2 seconds before. It wasn't helpful, but it does illustrate, frankly, that this is not the place to put 2 family houses. It would be far better, as I said earlier, to have something sympathetic to the area that reflected the community around. not just a promise about a policy that we will engage, which of course could be changed at any time, but something that is built in the right way in the first place. So there has been a large amount of opposition locally to this. I think that's opposition that's fully justified. This is the oldest building in Bramcote, bar the conservation area. It should be respected. It should have something around it which is suitable. This is not suitable, and so I cannot, I'm afraid, support this application. Okay, who would like to speak next? Councillor Grindell.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, this afternoon, when I went out on a site visit, it brought tears to my eyes to see that poor building as it is. It's a shame. It must have been grand in its day. Obviously, this building needs preserving and needs to be used, but the application for the other houses, I cannot go along with this. It's been ill thought out, I'm afraid, and I think it has to go back to the drawing board. So I will not be supporting this application in any sense or in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the site visit this afternoon. Like everybody else, there was the old cottage and really should be renovated and brought back into use. What a lovely old building, needs a lot of work, a lot of money spending on it. Now the rest of it, I can't make my mind up which way to go on this one. I think I said to you, Chair, when we were looking around, because we were discussing that the local people that live there are not happy with the design of these houses that are proposed. Maybe because it's council and it's the housing department, planning department can't get together and somebody bring some designs and maybe speak to those residents there and say, this is your choice, you live here, just have a look at A, B or whatever. Because if you're just going, to me, it looks as if you've got a spare piece of land, okay, we need more houses, we've already said this, haven't we? And the council need more houses. But it looks as if they've thought, all right, there's that old cottage and this bit of land at the side of it, we'll dump them there, you know. If you're going to do it properly. It's a council thing, get together, sort it out. That's my opinion for what is.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to speak? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I suppose unfortunately I'm the postman there as well, and I've been for a long time, and I'm well aware the way the residents reacted to a number of things. First, about the cottage, they were upset. Then the way the consultation was handled, that caused a lot of problems and upset to a lot of the residents. But when you look at it logically, again, I can't understand why they want to build something there next to a community that is self-contained. And just round the corner is Carlton's Court, where a lot of the pensioners live here. They go walking round Cookie's Pond, up Ewlam Lane, and they talk to a lot of the gentlemen and ladies in the cottages as well. The other point being, flooding is a major problem, and I've noticed that over the 2 years I've been the postman down there, but that's another thing that needs to be looked at. And I honestly believe a better scheme put forward, I'm saying dementia-friendly bungalows or whatever, and I've got to agree, is far better for what we've got. And if you think about the surrounding area that we've got Fields Farm, we've got Coventry Lane, we've got a number of developments coming up, which we are building affordable houses for families. And I would much rather a scheme came forward that looked after that self-contained people, that some people that aren't very, you know, and they do look after each other, and that's what I think we need to maintain.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bagshaw.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I went to look at this today. My first thought was,
how has this building been allowed to get in this disastrous state of repair? It's not pretty, it's tinned up, it's not listed. And someone said, we have to look at the closeness to the road. Well, you need to come to Eastwood and go into Croft. We actually sit on roads up there where traffic goes past us. I would presume that if you throw enough money at this place, it could be restored. But to me, and I'm totally against what everybody said, I think it should be demolished, done away with, and let us put a better design onto it. We could put more apartments, wheelchair access apartments, or whatever we should do there. But to me, I can't see anyone saving a building that's had a fire inside. It's apparently a wreck inside. I don't know how much money you'd have to throw at it to get it right. It's sandwiched between a new development that, to me, I have a problem with. So, all I can say that I would support this development, and I would definitely recommend that that horrible, dilapidated old building is razed to the ground. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Philip Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I find the discussions tonight bizarre, almost surreal, quite frankly. The application, as it says, is brought to the committee as it is an application made by the council. Well, for goodness sake, you are all part of this coalition of chaos, and I think we've seen the chaos tonight. If there are all these reservations and concerns and disquiet, why on earth didn't you get it all sorted out before you wasted planning officers' time letting them submit an application that's got to come to this committee and possibly will be rejected, I don't know, possibly will be approved. But if it's rejected, then it's back to square one. This should all have been sorted out, and an application that could be supported by all members of this coalition brought before the committee tonight. Because of course, as it's an application by the council, it would have had to come to committee. Normally, I suspect it would have been done under delegated powers. So that's the first thing, the first point that I would make. Get your act together, for crying out loud. Now, we're told that this can't go ahead because it's adjacent to a busy road. Well, I remember an hour and a half ago, we approved, or you approved, 250 houses at Orsworth at the side of a very, very busy, fast road. So it's all right in Orsworth, but it's not in Bramcote. And we're told tonight that the design is shocking, it's overbearing, it's overlooking. About 3/4 of an hour ago, you forced through an application for 42 prefabs on a site next to the railway station. It's all right for them there to be overbearing, overlooking, crammed together, but it's not all right for Bramcote. Now, I really find it unbelievable that you can criticise the design, the picture that was put up there, and I know I always say the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but quite honestly, I don't think any reasonable-minded person can say that what was proposed there isn't really, it's not offensive, it's not jarring, it fits in nicely. And I can understand local residents whose houses have had a view across Bramcote Park or to Bramcote Park, not liking the fact that they may lose some of their view. But, you know, looking at the site plan, there is still plenty of space. I can't see anything wrong with that particular, the particular development. the particular proposal. But if you all didn't like it, or some of you didn't like it, in this controlling coalition, then you should have got it sorted out before you got here. And as for talking about safeguarding, for goodness sake, how are people who are going to move into these properties, how are they going to be a danger to the existing residents? Because that's what safeguarding is about. How are they going to be a danger? How are they going to abuse them? It's a bit of an insult, isn't it, to the people that you're proposing to put in, because we're told it's affordable housing, and presumably the council will have some sort of control on whoever goes in there. So I understand that if local councillors have objections from residents, that they've got to support their residents, or need to support their residents, or at least they do if they want to get re-elected. But for goodness sake, I thought you could have come up with something better than you've come up with tonight, and you could have got it sorted out before it got to this stage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a right smile on my face as Councillor Owen, of course, who presided over one of the worst house building records this authority has seen over the last administration, trying to dish out some advice to the current administration. But there are some important principles, of course, to consider as part of this application. And one of the themes tonight has, of course, been around standards, particularly space standards. And here we have before us an application within the gift of the authority, which is committing to space standards, not compromising on space standards, and delivering the type of quality kind of housing that an authority not only could be proud of, but of course could demonstrate as a standard to other house builders and developers in the borough. And alongside that, of course, are the potential benefits of, well, the real benefits of standards, environmental standards around delivery, particularly as was referred to around ground source heat pumping and photovoltaic, something which as an authority we should be leading on rather than preaching on in that sense of the word. I think my disappointment, or one of the disappointments that has been apparent in the background to this application, something I've never experienced. I think I've been on the planning committee for the last 10 years or so. Something I've never experienced before is the terrible malicious correspondence which I think has been circulated under the auspices of a local authority, a Broxtowe Borough Council correspondence that isn't true, which has led to mistruths being out in the community around what the intended use for, or indeed what residents may be there, something which is completely untrue. What is unfortunate for the residents in that situation is it's hard for the committee to be able to truly decouple the legitimacy of some of their concerns versus the illegitimacy of their concerns, which may have been raised through the act of a malicious correspondence. And that's really, really disappointing, something I've never, ever experienced before. In terms of the recognition, though, that there have been some significant local concern raised about certainly the initial proposals that were before the Housing Committee, not the Planning Committee, but had come before the Housing Committee on more than one occasion. I think the authority can say that it has responded to local concerns in that element, and compromise, and often I've refrained at this committee, compromise is something that we should look to in terms of often emotive planning issues, and in that sense the proposals that are before the Planning Committee, which have been agreed and passed through the Housing Committee of this authority, are ones which show correspondence, compromise, and indeed some reaction to local concerns, particularly about the retention of Fish Pond Cottage itself, but also in terms of over-intensification on the site. In terms of the actual community mix itself, my own view, this is a personal view, I subscribe to the Dutch model. I subscribe to the Dutch model of intergenerational living, actually. And I think it is a mistake to have almost like an inverse pensioner ghetto of areas of communities which are wholly of one type or another. There are definitely mental health, and I'm talking about degenerative disease, and I'm talking about, and there are other physical health problems with having communities of all one type and age, particularly in the age range. And there are demonstrable benefits to having mixed communities, intergenerational communities, which mix and engage and learn and contribute to each other. And I'm actually a supporter of more intergenerational community building, and this would be a proposal which met with some of those principles, which is the way I would like to live across the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Because you're aware of my view that this actually doesn't achieve that sort of intergenerational community. It simply puts two-family houses in an existing residential community. It doesn't create the mixed community. To my mind, the compromise, the appropriate compromise here would be the development of bungalows, not the development of houses. That is certainly something as a councillor I would be happy with. But this, I think, will be a compromise too far. Okay, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I think it's disappointing that I have to point out to some councillors in this room tonight that planning is very much independent from the committee structure of this authority. It's quite possible that a committee can come up with a plan, an officer can come up with a plan, an architect can come up with an application, but it is still up to this quasi-judicial body to make the decision as to whether it's acceptable or not. Now, it just escapes me why some people in this room don't understand the difference between the committee structure, the ruling party, and the independence of the planning committee. But there you go. We've also been accused of being a coalition of chaos that can't get its act together and bring an application to this meeting that would have been accepted unanimously by the coalition. Well, of course, on this committee, we're non-party. You can't be whipped. You have your own opinion, and that's what you stick to. And I do remind, and you know, I didn't actually interrupt you.
Quiet whilst councillors are speaking, please, and not have separate conversations going on.
Can I refer back to, as an example, Councillor Watts, Bexhill Court in my ward, where there was a proposal to get rid of the tennis court, which was derelict, and build dementia homes. It had gone through cabinet, as we had in those days, on several occasions, had been voted for by the person who, the councillor Owen that has called as the coalition can't, right through the cabinet process. But when it came to the planning, he voted against application. The application was refused. So that indicates the independence of planning from the council structure. And Allsworth, I have a lot of sympathy for Councillor Ball, but we didn't put Allsworth on the local plan. It was the previous administration that put Allsworth on the local plan. It was the previous administration who sent it to the inspector and consulted on it. So you can't blame us for that. And I half suspect a lot of Councillor Owen's problem is because this is Bramcote. Because I do recall at a previous meeting referring to the people of Bramcote as metropolitan elite, Chair. So if this had been anywhere else, I suspect that Councillor Owen's opinion might have been completely different. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? In which case we move to the vote. So the recommendation is to approve planning. Oh, sorry, Mr. Dawson. Anything you want to? No. So the recommendation is to approve planning commission. Can I see those in favour, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, So that is carried. So we had abstentions, 1 abstention, 2 abstentions. So that is carried. I'm going to break whilst we move things round. Yeah. The original draft of the agenda said had 350 pages on it. It's plus a show at the side. Okay, I think we're ready to start again. So welcome to the next group of people coming in. So this is item 5.5, which is an application to construct a 2-storey front and rear extension, raise the ridge height, inserting a hip roof to the existing dwelling, including a loft conversion and rear box dormer. Insert a hip roof to the existing single-storey side extension and external alterations. And there's 29 roof green present in Bramcote. So, Mr. Dawson would like to introduce us.
Thank you, Chair. Please make reference to the late items. There's 2 lots here. The late items we sent around back end of last week to clarify the consultation process and some amendments. I'll come to that in a bit in a minute. 3 additional emails we've received since then. The response to late items circulated early. Intended to read on, we'll still have a look for with green present. No bay windows or porch. Number 66 is a bay window, number 64 porch. And concern online system not working for neighbour representations. The inputs here that neighbours would not respond immediately to consultations and set many residents. I've checked this, it is working. 2 emails from residents objecting. Surprised it's considered there would be little impact on the neighbouring bungalow at number 31, as the extended house would tower over the property, be extremely close, causing overshadowing, loss of privacy. Was requested a visit from the planner to discuss how the proposal affects privacy. Last one, an email from applicants confirming amended plans are correct and have met with neighbours and provided update copies with more details and measurements. I personally checked all the measurements and looked at the plans, further gone back on the spec. 2-storey front and rear extensions, raising the roof and a loft conversion, infilling the southern side of the front elevation, and 2 stories across the rear. You'd end up with a completely different looking dwelling but one we're happy with and we think the design is acceptable. There are no meter issues. We believe that we warrant refusal. The roof height is raised in the middle of the property by 1.5 metres. It is hidden away from neighbours, so its impact is limited in our view. We don't believe this is overdeveloped the plot, and we think it's towards the NPPF. There will be some impacts on number 31. Now the extension is produced 2 metres to the rear and 0.9 metres away, with intense impact is not detrimental and not detrimental enough to warrant refusal. No parking issues, and the drainage is not something dealt with through the planning, it's an issue when we get to the building trial stage. We recommend approval. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks very much. Thank you. So I shall move the recommendation, which is to approve planning permission.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And in terms of speakers, we have firstly Mr. Will Woods, who's the applicant. Mr. Woods, thank you.
Hi.
You want to come over to the microphone just over there? Thank you.
Okay.
And as for all speakers, you have 3 minutes once I get my clock set back up. And I'll give you a prompt if we get close towards the end. So
Okay.
the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So on behalf of myself and my partner Selena, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak tonight about our application. I believe it's been summarised in the introduction, but we purchased the property with the intention of creating a modern family home that we could live in for a number of years. We believe the proposed development is in line with the surrounding properties and is proportionate to the plot in the existing building. We note that there were some corrections requested to the drawings, which we corrected and updated and supplied some more dimensions and details. And I believe the site visit today should have provided clarity as well, based on seeing the property in real life. We did notify the neighbours from the start of our intention to submit a planning application, and as far as we could with COVID, sort of try to communicate and be open and clear with what we were looking to do. We do note the objections, but also the responses from the planning officer in the report. So noting the report and the summary of additional notes, we welcome the recommendation to grant planning and request that the committee approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to take your seat again, please. Next. And next we turn to Mrs. Atton, who is the next door neighbour. So Sue, if you'd like to take your seat. Thank you. Exactly the same. You've got 3 minutes, and I'll give you a prompt as we get towards the end. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Chair and members, I live adjacent to number 29 and speak on behalf of objectors. Firstly, this application contains many factual errors, and significant elements of the proposal, such as the full height third storey and front 2-storey extensions, are excluded from the narrative and the whole householder application form. Moreover, the wrong certificate of ownership has been completed. Section 65 Town and Country Planning Act 1990 mandates that an LPA shall not even entertain an application until the required statutory notices have been given and the correct certificate of ownership submitted. Such an application isn't valid. Secondly, turning to planning policy, the proposal directly contravenes 17.3 Broxtowe Local Plan, which requires that for roof extensions, these should reflect the design, angle of pitch and shape of the original roof. The proposed roof does not meet any of these requirements. Moving to national policy, 118E Section 11 2019 NPPF provides for an upward extension where it 1 would be consistent with the prevailing height and form of neighbouring properties and the overall street scene, and 2 complies with any local design and policy standards. On the first condition, anyone can see that the upward extension is wholly inconsistent with neighbouring properties and the overall street scene. On the second, as above, the altered roof design, pitch and shape do not comply with the local plan, so both conditions fail. Despite these breaches, planning approves the upward extension, relying for justification on the position of the ridge to the centre of the dwelling. The Broxtowe Plan and NPPF still apply, however. We cannot simply opt out, and where a proposal is contrary to local and national policy, it should be refused. Thirdly, justification is also based on the house being in a street where property heights step upwards. To the south ground level steps upwards, but property roof heights do not. There is a one-storey step down to the adjoining bungalow, then 2 more bungalows beyond. And to the north and east, ground level, property and roof heights of bungalows and houses also step downwards. Finally, this development benefits one to the detriment of many. More than 20 written objections have now spoken to policy and material considerations such as overshadowing by a towering building, sense of enclosure,
About 30 seconds
and loss of privacy, sun and light. There were multiple neighbour requests for planning officer site visits, but it was only through council intervention on Saturday that neighbours were visited today. Notwithstanding the inaccurate drawings and inadequate narrative, and disregard for the significant detriment to neighbour amenity and well-being, the application does not conform with legislative requirements, and the proposal breaches local and national policy. We would humbly ask members to refuse planning permission.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
Thank you. And again, if you could take your seat. Thank you. Okay. Right. Well, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll open this for debate. And again, as I asked for this to come to the committee, I will go first. I want to make it absolutely clear that I have no objection to this property being developed, and it has scope for a development. But I do think, I'm afraid, that this particular application is going a bit too far. In particular with regard to the roof height, and that will have a significant impact, I think, on both immediate neighbours and indeed on the properties behind, which will see it over the top of the trees. The rear extension is significant, but I think that would have been livable with if it was just a 2-storey extension, but going up into the 3rd storey, and I understand the desire to create as much space as possible, but I'm afraid I think that that does have a significant impact, and the roof line would be well above that of all the neighbouring properties, and so I'm afraid for that reason I find that I can't support this application. Okay. So that's my say. Anybody else want to have a say? Councillor Grindal.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the planning application is in the beginning I thought would be fine, but looking at it in depth this past week and then looking at it this afternoon, the roof is not right. The roof is too high. We're talking about over 9.5 metres, and that is high. We went around down the road that we were asked to, go to number 4. We looked at number 4. If it has been built, if it gets past tonight, they'll see above the trees, and the trees are quite tall. If the applicant, if this doesn't get passed, then I suggest the applicant thinks about a better planning application and not make it quite so high, and possibly doing a 2-storey, but obviously that's up to the applicant. I couldn't vote for this because it's not right, and it's not in the correct place where the other residence houses are. So no, it won't get my vote.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, as you know, I went and had a look at this property today, and I always think it's always difficult when someone wants to extend the house for the neighbours that live either side. The same with the ones on Sandy Road.
Sandy Lane.
Sorry, Sandy Lane. Yeah, it is. And let's face it, over the years we've been to lots of properties and lots of places where there's been extensions, and I always look at them and I always look to see, are they light, not being able to get light into them? Is it going to be overbearing? Now, when I went round the back of this house, there was nobody nobody overlooking them, they wouldn't be looking over at anybody. And when the extension is done, it really wouldn't be overbearing or stopping the light from the neighbours. So that was my thoughts immediately. As I say to you before, I'm a vision person. I look at something and if I thought it was, because my goodness me, we've approved extensions a million times worse than this. But I couldn't see anything wrong with this, and I just felt to myself, well, if it doesn't get approved, I think it would be a case of somebody winning it and appeal. And all the things that it said, I mean, surely our planners, we must at certain times agree and give them credit for what they see and say. And I just felt that I couldn't see a problem with it. If it was going to upset the neighbours or destroy their lives, I would be the first to say no to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chair. I also visited today, as you know, and the applicant, I think, has put forward a good application. I mean, it was one of the things we were asked to look at, with the two houses on either side, and we went into their gardens to look. And the two houses on either side have benefited over the years from some very, very, very distinctive extensions. And this particular property, when you look at it, when you get to the back, it's almost as if it's an original form and hasn't been changed at all during the years. And now, because the applicant has bought it and wants to make full use of it, what's happened is his neighbours are upset, but they probably weren't that upset when they extended their houses quite considerably many years ago. So, and when you look at it, you stand at the side and look down towards number, number 27, and look further down the garden line past 27. There are extensions along there that stick out further than this applicant wants to put his extension. You know, the gardens at the back have got lots of bits creeping into them, and indeed on number 27 their extension sticks out slightly further than what's proposed for number 29. And also we look at number 31, it's the same thing. There's been a considerable extension put on the side of the house, and also that isn't affected by this extension. So, you know, to me, I'm for it. It's good use of a house. It's going to be a good build when it's done, and it'll make someone a nice family home, which everybody else in the street has currently got. There's a nice family home.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wilmot.
Yes, I visited this afternoon as well. I didn't have a problem with the roof. What I do have a problem with is I think the extension at the back is too far. If the footprint was only for a single-storey extension at the back, and then any upper storey was roughly in line with the property, as you look at this property from the street, the property on the left, if the back wall of this house was extended on the first floor level, somewhere around about where the back wall of the house on the left is, then I would agree. But as it is at the moment, I think it's too bulky, and I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Bowshaw.
Yeah.
Paul, could you switch your microphone?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, I obviously visited this afternoon, and having looked at what he wanted to do, I really was very sympathetic with how it is. My only concern is that extend the height of this roof. I think that's, in my eyes, just couldn't be something that I could agree with. And what worries me is we've got an applicant and his neighbours. I just don't understand why these people don't get together and have a chat and hopefully get something that will suit them all before it comes to this stage. So at the moment, I agree with what he wanted to do, except the roof height is causing me some concern.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? No? If not, Mr Dawson, anything you want to say to no? So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of granting planning permission? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I think everyone's going to have their hands up towards the end.
Oh, sorry. We did 4.
Can you redo?
Can you redo it? So those 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is refused on the grounds of the roof height and the impact on the agreement of the neighbours, no doubt. But for the applicants, I'm sure we can find something that can be done. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Okay, thank you very much. I don't think we have anybody on the next item, so we don't need to have a move around of people. So that takes us to item 5.6, and that will be slip out if you want to at the back. 5.6 is the land adjacent to 24 Princess Avenue in Queenston. Outline planning application for all matters reserved to construct a detached dwelling. Mr. Dawson, anything to say on this?
Not much, thank you. You were pleased to hear there's no late items. Finally, no late items. There's a similar scheme on this was approved in 2017. Those in the planning committee then. The only change is the parking space. You see page 2 or 4 of the report, paragraph 1.2, that summarises that point. All matters reserved, but particular plans clearly show sufficient room here for dwelling, side garden 24 being large enough. No highest objections, and 1 off-street parking space. The FRA has been submitted, and no issues in this regard. We can't see issues with this at all. We recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I shall move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, or observations? No? If not, we can go straight to the vote. All those in favour? It's nice when we can all agree on some things, isn't it? So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so we've just got the delegated decisions to go through. I'll take these page by page. If you wish to indicate or wish to speak, please shout out or wave your hand at me or whatever, make sure it's an entity. So page 228, 229, 230, 231, 232, 233. Thank you very much. So, at 21:49, I'll declare the meeting closed. I'm glad that we're going to put the other 6 items on the agenda for tonight. Wow. Okay, so we have another 2 weeks time.
I'll see you
tomorrow night.
curtail it a bit tomorrow.
Yeah, well,
Sorry, I didn't realise. I thought it was supposed to be an hour.
yeah, not to worry, not to worry. Well, we shall finish, I shall say, anyway,
work really well marketed. They give you the guarantee and a month when oh, you get this currency. Oh, yes. Medium rare, say very fast.